Welcome to the new Officiant Era, a series spotlighting officiants building their business and brands with bold voices. I'm your host, Tiara, New Jersey officiant, owner of Royal Treatment with Tiara, and creator of the Wedding Officiant Academy. And I am beyond excited for today's guest. Can you please give us a formally informal introduction to yourself and your business?
Sure. My name is Nico Raineau. My wedding officiant business is RomCom Weddings. I'm based in Los Angeles, California.
Love that. I cannot wait to get into this conversation because with a name like RomCom Weddings, I'm sure you got a lot to share, a lot of wisdom.
Or just a lot of, I don't know, goofing around too. That's part of it.
That's the calm part of the
Yeah,
rom-com.
exactly.
Love the balance. Okay, so before we jump into our conversation, I wouldn't be me if I did not start off with a little bit of gratitude. So I want to invite you into a practice I do with all of my couples before every meeting, which is a gratitude check-in. You share one thing you're grateful for, I'll share one thing I'm grateful for, and then we'll go into the icebreaker.
Sure. Who goes first?
Because you're a guest and I typically put people on the spot, I will go first.
Okay, cool.
Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. I have to be honest. I am grateful for this random 80-degree day that we had yesterday. I know the weather is usually really nice in California, but in Jersey, we be fighting for our lives in November, December, January. So for it to be a random 80, it was really nice. I spent the day with my daughter. She's also randomly off this week. I was like, what is going on? But here we are. So it was really nice to spend a beautiful day with her out and about. And that's definitely my gratitude.
All right. Well, I could give like a trivial, fun icebreaker answer, but I'll be honest. I'll show up with authenticity and kind of be honest about honestly just what I felt when you asked about gratitude. My family's gone through some turmoil this year. My wife was diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of this year. She's doing well now. So when you asked what I'm grateful for, I immediately just thought of like I'm so grateful to live in California in a major metropolitan area where we just have access to really great healthcare and hospitals and healthcare practitioners and doctors, because that's like been a huge part of our year. And I'm just feeling grateful for that because we've been really well taken care of, and there's a lot of people that we trust. And living in a city where you have like some of the best people in the field. I'm really grateful for that. So that's my honest answer. I don't want to bring things down, but also we can bring things up because my wife is doing really well. But yeah, that's what I'm grateful.
And you don't know this about me, but I come from the healthcare world. I used to work on a hematology oncology unit for 4 years. Oh,
Sure.
yes.
So this just became a cancer podcast. We're not really talking about weddings anymore. Yeah.
So, I love that your wife is doing better, feeling better, and I am absolutely praying for her and her continued success in recovery.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would love for you to share what is one thing you love about officiating? This is our icebreaker.
I just have to pick one thing, huh? Um, I honestly feel like one thing that I really love is just getting to know people. I feel like I have a background as like a screenwriter and a storyteller, and part of that is because I wasn't really a science person. I was a more humanities person. Uh, so I feel like I almost became like a screenwriter and a filmmaker because it was like a path to becoming like a sociologist and psychologist with less formal education.
Right.
I could just kind of be like self-taught and like learning about people. But I do really love the process of interviewing my couples and then getting to know them because everyone has a different relationship with their relationship. They have a different philosophy about love. They have a different position on what marriage means and what commitment means. And like no two couples are the same. And I interview a lot of my couples individually, and like even within a relationship, they have slightly different philosophies about things. And I find it so fascinating to get to know people and to get insights into their perspectives. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I'm like stockpiling this treasure trove of humanity and personalities. And it's just really fun. Like even when I'm kind of like tired and don't feel like working today, and I'll log into a Zoom and I'll start a session with a couple. I feel like 10 minutes in, I'm totally rejuvenated because I'm getting to meet someone, I'm getting to talk to them, and I'm getting filled with their energy, and I'm like reminded why I love doing this so much. So that's one thing.
I love that. That was so good. That was so good. And before I get into my next question, I just want to jump in a little bit. You say that you come from a background of screenwriting. I would love for you to speak a little bit to how those tangible talents, how you recognize that those tangible talents could cross over and, help you in your officiant business. I think a lot of the times when we are coming from a new industry or a different industry and stepping into a new industry, sometimes we don't realize that what we learned from that old industry, we can take it and apply it into the current industry that we're in. So similar for me with healthcare, I come from a very holistic and wellness point of view, and that's why gratitude is extremely important in all the work that I do with my couples, and it shows its impact later on as well. But yeah, I would love for you to talk about maybe something, that how did you recognize that was a tangible talent and how did you bring it into your business?
There's a lot of crossover between kind of my skill set as a screenwriter and entertainer, and kind of how I parlayed that into being an officiant. I mean, there's an aspect of what we do that does have, that is like the being a non-denominational minister part of it, right? Like public speaking, but also kind of holding space, being a ceremonialist. There's, the marriage license and paperwork aspect of it, and like being an expert on, marriage and law and requirements, which is all part of the gig. But ultimately, people are hiring you to be a part of a performance in a way. Like we are kind of standing in front of an audience, and we are, for 15, 20, 30 minutes, we are not just kind of like giving a performance, we're also entertaining guests. So I come from a performance background. Before I became a screenwriter and a filmmaker, I thought I wanted to be an actor for a really long time. So my original background is in acting. Growing up in a small town, going to acting classes, being like president of my drama club in high school, doing community theater, all that stuff. And then I kind of parlayed that into being a filmmaker and a screenwriter. So what's nice is in becoming an officiant is like I've circled back to like being a performer again, and kind of, standing on stage, giving a performance. So like that's one part of it that I really love. And the other part, just in terms of being a screenwriter, is, and I don't like mean to toot my own horn, but I'll toot a little bit. Toot toot. Is I've done a lot of research on like my colleagues. I've also just gotten to know a lot, like you and other colleagues in the field. I'm actually currently making a documentary about professional wedding officiants because I love this community and I think they're underserved, and we're all very eclectic and fun and kind of kooky, and I just feel like it deserves, a little spotlight. So I've gotten to know a lot of professional officiants out there, and I'm pretty sure I can say I'm the only professional officiant in the market that is a professional award-winning writer, because like we all are writers. We all get to know our couple. We all write ceremony, whether it's pre-written or whether it's custom every time. We are writers. We're storytellers. What I bring is an additional skill set, an additional credential of, being a published screenwriter and an award-winning screenwriter of romantic comedies. So I can parlay that into learning the couple's story and literally telling their romantic comedy in the same way that I would write a movie, just a condensed, kind of fun, summarized version. So that's something. And then also, like, what I love about being a filmmaker is like creating an emotional experience, creating something that the couple and their guests are going to remember. Well, as a filmmaker, was creating an emotional experience, taking an audience and giving them something memorable that they'll remember forever. Like your goal as a filmmaker is to like make something that has lasting power, right? That stays with you. We think about the movies we watched when we were growing up and the impact they made, and how we watched them with our friends and they become a part of your life. You quote them through, like, you want to have that lasting power and kind of emotional connection. And what I realized is you can do the same thing as an officiant. You just do it with a smaller audience, and you do it on a one night only performance instead of like having the ability to kind of be viewed over and over again. So in a way, it's smaller, it's more intimate, but you still have the opportunity to connect with people really emotionally and to move them and to create a lasting memory. So for all those reasons, that's a long answer to your question, but all those reasons, like there is a lot of crossover and they're not too dissimilar, kind of like what I do as a filmmaker and what I do as an officiant.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And again, I mean, again, your similarities feel like they draw a more direct line, but it's still, again, identifying what are couples looking for, right? Maybe, there's always this conversation about couples are looking to not have a boring wedding, right? So you see people talking about having a fun wedding and engaging wedding and vibrant and, all these different languages that we put out there. But I have to agree with you. I don't think I see anybody else marketing a rom-com style ceremony. So I would love for you to talk about kind of how does that enhance your couple's experience? And do they have certain expectations when they're like going to work with you? Like, what is it like?
I guess you'd have to ask them exactly what the expectations are. But yeah, I mean, I think generally the couples that gravitate towards me are couples who want like a secular ceremony, first of all, something non-denominational, something non-traditional, something definitely entertaining. I think that's always a big thing is they want a ceremony that feels different, that feels entertaining, that's going to be fun and kind of lively. And I think that's kind of why people generally find me, at least in the Southern California area. There's a couple of us that kind of, market the fun kind of romantic wedding. But I think given my entertainment background and also just given we all kind of know what the tone of a romantic comedy is, right? Like we know it's going to be lighthearted, it's going to be a little jovial, it's going to be a little playful, but it's also going to pull on our heartstrings and it might make us cry a little bit. So in just saying that I am the romantic comedy wedding officiant, it's like a lot of work is done for me in terms of advertising what the tone of your ceremony could be, or at least what world your ceremony is going to exist in, and that is kind of what I do, and that's the space that I like to play in. So I think that's conveyed really clearly, and then yeah, I think beyond that, it's just we all kind of grew up with our parents' generation or, at least one generation before us feeling like ceremonies were kind of this boring thing we had to slog through in order to get to the party.
Yeah.
And I'm very much of the mind that everyone is at your wedding to see you get married. And the reception is really what you do to thank them for coming and to, celebrate a little bit after the ceremony. But the ceremony is why they're there. So why is that the boring part? That should be the start of the party. We should just get the good times rolling right away. And so I also encourage my couples to remember that and to remember that the ceremony can be really anything you want it to be. There aren't really a lot of rules that we have to follow. There's some paperwork and based on what state you're in, a little bit of, fine print that you need to be aware of. But other than that, a ceremony can be whatever you want it to be. So whatever feels authentic and meaningful to the couple, let's just start having fun moment one when the ceremony begins. And we just keep those good times rolling all the way through the wedding.
I think it is a lot of conversation about the ceremony being the smallest part of the day or, an insignificant part of the day when it is really a big part of the day. It's just as much planning that goes into the reception, goes into the ceremony. Honestly, I feel like even a little bit more just because there's more expectation around the ceremony, there's more anticipation around the ceremony, and it's more of a focal point of the day. And I feel like, again, we as officiants can do a much better job helping couples understand that, or not even understand that, just kind of reminding them of that because it's so much outside pressure, right? You have this societal pressure, you have family pressure, you have your own, ideas of what you think you should have or what you shouldn't have. And it's so much that goes on the couple that it's almost like as officiants, again, we're in this unique position to give them permission and remind them, hey, this is about you, right? This is about what you want. They are going to enjoy whatever it is that they're provided for that day because they're coming to celebrate with you. So let's give them something, to celebrate. So yeah. I love that.
Well, might I add too that I feel like when you show up to a wedding or when most guests show up to a wedding, everyone kind of has preset expectations based on previous weddings they've been to, or like, movies they've seen or whatever. And I think everyone generally kind of knows what to expect from a reception. You know that there's going to be a cocktail hour, you're going to have dinner. Maybe it's a served dinner, maybe it's a buffet. Like, the details you don't know about, but you generally know what to expect. The ceremony, I think, is the one thing that people show up to and they're always like, what's this going to be?
Right.
Like, they don't like, is it going to be boring? Is the officiant going to slur their words? Is it, like Uncle Bob, who's going to be like so nervous that they actually like fumble the whole thing? Or like, is this going to be like a charismatic friend that the couple had do it? Like, it's the one part that I think almost inherently generates the most excitement and anticipation, because it's the anomaly of the whole day.
Yeah.
And so every time like a ceremony starts, I think people are already a little more curious than they're going to be during any other moment in your wedding. And so why not give your guests like a really surprising, fun experience to know that they're in like the good hands of a professional who's going to focus on entertainment, who's going to make you laugh, and who's going to like find the right tone and like really represent the couple authentically. Like, my goal every time is to like pull the rug out from under everyone with just like an amazing experience that they didn't realize they were going to get to have.
Yeah, I think I'm very similar. I think as an officiant, as you start to kind of find your own craft, your own signature style, your own, secret sauce, it gets to be very exciting. Even for you, like, you're showing up and you're excited to tell the story, and you're excited to hear the reactions. And for me personally, in a way that I run my business, it's like the couples get 90% of their script, their love story, they get to experience for the first time along with their guests. So it is that little, element of surprise that they get to lean into and like really enjoy. And so I would love to get a little conversation going about how and why is humor such an important aspect to your ceremonies, to wedding ceremonies in general, and what are some tips for officiants who want to start to infuse humor into the ceremony? How's a good way to balance, right? We don't want to go up there and be a stand-up comedian, right? We don't want to make fun of the moment and the day, but we also want to relieve our couples, right? We want to give them, a couple of moments so it's not super lovey-dovey and overly emotional and I don't want to cry all day and I'm very private with my feelings, right? Having those moments of laughter really breaks up that nervousness. So what are some tips that you have, and why do you think it's important?
Well, I think it's important for one reason, because of what you just said. I think like it's totally normal for the couple to be a little anxious at the beginning of the ceremony. Everyone's looking at them. Normally, they have no idea what I'm going to say. Like, they're a little on edge. So I think breaking that tension with a couple of like tasteful, really well-timed jokes kind of not only puts them at ease, but puts the audience at ease, because I think the audience can also feel their anxiety. Like I said, the audience doesn't know what to expect from the ceremony. So the minute that you kind of like land a joke that everyone gets, that's like in a good tone, I think everyone's just like, oh, we're going to have fun. And they know that they're in good hands, that you know what you're doing and like they can trust you. So I think I think humor is like pivotal to start in that way. So I always try to start with some sort of just light humor. It might not be the first thing I do, but like within the first 3 sentences, I'm going to try to like land a setup and a punchline in some way that's going to like, relax everybody. And then in terms of like where that humor comes from for me, or sort of like, I agree with you. It's like, we're not there to be like, a slock jock, DJ or MC and like making like, jokes in poor taste. I always tell my couples that a lot of my humor comes from them. It comes from their anecdotes and their story and their personality and the way they've told me certain fun anecdotes. And then I just kind of like filter that through my voice, but I try to keep it in their tone and in their personality. But I'm really just like basically telling their jokes back at them with their community. I have literally like quoted funny things my couples have told me, and I just steal them and tell them back to everybody, and it's great. But a lot of times, yeah, I'm taking their story and I'm like, I'm weaving their personalities and their humor together using my skill set in a way that they probably wouldn't have known how to do, or maybe their friend that they would have asked to officiate wouldn't know how to do either. And that just comes from like me having years and years of experience in storytelling and like doing, being a professional storyteller outside of weddings. So, and I think that's also a way to take humor and use it to reflect who the couple is and to really make the ceremony feel authentic and personal to them, because so much of what you are basically crafting in order to set them at ease or get them to laugh or even their community is essentially their words and their story and their life, just kind of like woven together in an artistic way and projected back at them. So a lot of times, like, I'm not doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of like coming up with the material. That's why I interview them. I get the material from them. It's just then it's on me to figure out how to like weave all those strands of story and humor together in a way that like makes the ceremony feel like it is one of a kind, because it is every time. And it's a lot of work. Like, I spend more time interviewing my couples and getting to know them and crafting the ceremony than any other officiant I know, for better or worse. But I'm a little more expensive than most of them too, because I know that what I'm doing is in a slightly different category than everybody else. And it takes much more of my time. And so like I compensate for that, and I compensate fairly because I've gotten to know what other officiants charge in different markets. And so I feel like that's fair. But yeah, it does but I've also heard the feedback from my couples that they recognize how much time I spent with them in order to like bring that humor and to make it feel authentic and to make it feel personal. And I think that's the best place for humor to come from. It should feel like it's theirs, not mine, if that makes sense.
Right. No, and I love that you spoke on that. One, that you are taking the time, one, to interview the couple, to even learn their jokes, learn their anecdotes, learn the way that they converse with each other, the language and the verbiage, you know what I'm saying, that they use. And so when you do that, it makes it 10 times easier to add in those really like fun, quirky moments, right? That is so unique to the couple because it's the information that they provided to you, not something you
Yeah.
just, came up with on your, like a joke, you're going to make a weather joke or, here and there, but
Yeah.
it's
Most of
really,
the time, the best joke is like completely irreverent to the ceremony what we're talking about, because like I'll find like we'll be interviewing them, and this is why I prefer interviews to sending questionnaires, by the way, to my couples, because a questionnaire is great, it's the industry standard, but it does not allow you the opportunity to follow up on a question and to pull a thread and to dig a little deeper into something that's going to lead you down a rabbit hole to that like totally silly, crazy subplot that is like maybe 3 sentences, but will probably get the best laugh of the ceremony because it's so personal. And it's like almost like it, at first glance, it doesn't make sense that it would be in a ceremony, but you weave it in because it's about them and it's about their story. And life is part of like, life is tangential, and you're going to go on these little like side journeys and you're going to find these fun things. And so like, if something makes me laugh during our interviews, I'm just like then I know that it works, and I gotta put in the ceremony because it feels so like authentic to them. And then I'll go down like a quick little tangent just to get to that joke, and then I'll come back, and it's always worth it.
I love it. Listen, you have to take a risk to nail a joke. Like, you never know. You never know if it's going to land, but you have to try. And 80%, 85%, 90% of the time, it does land. It does. Yeah.
It does, but since this audience is mostly officiants, I will say, because this is like a piece of advice that I can offer, is like you do enough ceremonies, and like it feels a little routine after a while, even if the ceremony is different every time based on the couple, right? And so what makes it exciting for me as like a storyteller and someone who does enjoy humor and crafting jokes is like I always try to toe the line of like what I can get away with in a ceremony. Like, what is cool to say? What isn't cool to say? Like, how far is too far? And that is different every time based on the couple, and almost more so their audience. Because like whether or not my jokes land is 100% dependent upon their community and whether they're feeling the vibe and whether they're coming on for the ride with me. And if I get up there and I realize that like today's just not the day, or like the crowd maybe. I've noticed that there's a vibe that the couple has that is not always the vibe that their community
Yes.
has. So
Yeah.
I've written the ceremony for the couple and they might be into it. But if the crowd isn't into it, then I don't want to make them feel like there's this disassociation between them and their loved ones. So I think it's really important as you kind of move up in your officiating career or get more experience to realize that like you have to make real time adjustments during the ceremony. So I will be like going through my script or doing the ceremony and I'll get to a joke that's one of those jokes that I know in my mind, I'm like, I'm playing with the boundaries of what we can do. And I'll just be like, not the vibe. And I'll have to skip things and just make split-second judgment calls based on like what is appropriate, what is this crowd going to respond to. Also just like feeling the couple, how are they kind of like jiving with like what you've done and how you presented their story. And not to say that I'm ever doing anything inappropriate, but it's like you want them to be happy, they're your client, and you want them to have the best possible experience. So I've even and sometimes I'm off because you also in real time you're not sure. So like I was doing a ceremony once where I wasn't sure if it was the vibe, and I got to this joke and I was like, I'm just gonna skip it because I'm not sure. And then later, in like getting to know some of the family and friends, I kind of like I realized that the joke would have killed if I had landed it. But I just wasn't sure. And so I think a lot of times it's better to play it safe because you don't want to like I think that a ceremony can be remembered for the one mistake you made over the 100 great things that you did right. And so it's better to like play a little safe and to avoid any potential pitfalls just in case, because I think that your one mistake is going to be worse than all the good that you did.
Yeah.
So that's important.
No, that's super important. And the thing I wanted to add is if you are a cursing officiant, because they're out there, right? And it's okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You are a cursing officiant. I think similar to what you're saying, just being mindful and recognizing that in the guests, it's usually a range of generations, right? Usually it's like a
True. Yeah.
couple generations and then it keeps going up maybe to like the grandparents and stuff like that. So you kind of have a little bit of everybody in the audience. And I think, as a younger officiant myself, more non-traditional, more of a millennial, and I lean into it, right?
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
like, the joke, not everybody's going to get it, and that's okay. For me, it's like if my couple is cracking up, if the wedding party is cracking up, and then you see those couple people in the audience like dying laughing, you landed it. Like it's okay. You're not going to have everybody like belly laughing. Yeah. Like it's okay.
But also communication is key. Like I will say that like if once I've written my ceremony script and I know that like I do have like a couple curse words or a little bit of like vulgar language that I think is funny and I think they'll think is funny. Nonetheless, just to be safe, because again, going back to how like you don't want to make that mistake, I'll ask them, I'll say like, is one or two curse words okay? And I'll even tell them what word I'm going to use. I won't tell them in what context or where, but I'll be like, is this cool or not? Because I want to know now before I do it without giving too much away in terms of what they can expect in the ceremony. And like there's no reason why you can't have that communication. I think more communication is better than less, and I think they'll appreciate and also feel safe with you that you're asking them those questions and being aware of your tone ahead of time.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other piece I wanted to say, just because you talked about communication, you communicate with the guests too beforehand. Like I didn't do this at the beginning of my career, but going to a couple accelerators, seeing a couple of my officiant peers do things differently, I'm like, all right, let me just try this. Because I just noticed that it's almost like this misconception, right, that we talk about with ceremonies, that's supposed to be quiet and churchy and very polite. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you don't understand how important your presence is to the couple, so they want you to show up as yourself. Like they when we're in the calls and we're talking, they're like, oh no, like our family is this, our family is that, they're going to crack up, they're going to do this, we're so fun, and all this other stuff. And then you go to there and everybody's like on their best behavior, right? And I don't know if it's because they're dressed cute or they're waiting until cocktail hour to show out. I don't know.
Because
But
weddings and ceremonies are also traditional and we're kind of like used to it being a certain vibe. And that's why I think it's important for the way that we show up to kind of like convey to everyone that like they can be at ease and this is going to be a little different.
Yeah. And starting that off from the beginning, literally, like You know, a lot of this work is giving people invisible permission to go out and, do the things their way, the way that they want to do it. And so I feel like similarly for us as officiants now, I'm encouraging the guests, hey, laugh with us. That's what they want. They want you to be here. Don't leave us up here by ourselves. And I've also, for myself, have conceptualized when we're up there, and this is why I tell my couples too, when we're up there, we're in our own bubble. We're like in the TV screen and they're watching like from their couch. So like they're still gonna laugh when they see something funny or whatever, but we're up here. You know what I mean? So yes, they're watching, they're witnesses. That's exactly what they're doing, but we are the ones that are putting on the show, for lack of better terms. So it's really about us in this space. Don't be so worried about them in this space. It's almost like a 3D audience. Like they're there, but like they're not there. So that's kind of the way that I push it. And it helped me myself as an officiant, because sometimes, again, when you're newer, you get a little bit more nervous, or you're more focused on the crowd's reaction than your couple's reaction. And no offense, but your couples are the ones who are writing the reviews and stuff like that. So like the crowd is awesome, yeah. We love it. But we want to make sure that, your couple's proud. For me, I do a proud pick me campaign, but I want to make sure that my couples are proud to pick me. So
I love that.
Love that. That's so good. So I would love for you to share a little bit of advice, especially because as making a documentary about professional officiating, I would love for you to share maybe what you've learned along the way, what you've learned for yourself in your own business. But a lot of new officiants really struggle with finding their voice and understanding their brand or how they want to show up for their clients or in the market. So what advice do you have for newer officiants or just officiants just trying to figure it out, trying to show up and stand out in their local wedding community?
I think when you're first starting out, there's this like impulse to get as much work as possible because you need the experience and because you need the money because you've like started this new business. And so, there's this talk within the industry about like your ideal couple. And I think when you're starting, it's like, well, your ideal couple is the couple that's going to pay you, right? Like you just need all the couples possible.
Get your reps in.
And I totally get that. I was there as well, but I fully believe that if you want the most incoming business possible, it's actually very important to niche down. And what I mean is like if you try to satisfy everyone, you're gonna miss the mark on what makes you the perfect choice for certain couples. And so I'm very adamant that like anyone who's starting an officiant business, try to brand their business very specifically to what it is that you feel like is your uniqueness that you bring to the market. I call it marketing your maverick, because it's like what makes you what makes you different from everybody else. That's not only should be like your brand, but like literally the name of your business. And I feel kind of strongly about this because like, look, I'm RomCom Weddings. Like what I did not do is start a business where I'm Officiant Nico. And I don't want to like rag on like my colleagues and friends whose like businesses are just their names. But I don't think that conveys who you are. I think if you're like looking at an Instagram page or looking at a website and the name of your business is just your name, that doesn't tell me anything about what you do or what makes you special in the space other than what your name is. And I think, if you're passionate about that and that's what you want to do, okay, just know that you're going to have like, it's going to take you 3 or 4 additional hurdles just to get people to understand who you are and why they should hire you as opposed to someone else in your area. So if you can just bypass all of those, barriers for entry and just name your company the thing that makes you special and some play on words or something fun, then I think you're already halfway ahead to the finish line of getting whoever your ideal couples are and the people who want to work with you and who ultimately value what you do specifically, because that's what I know I care about the most is when a couple comes to me and already before we even have a consultation, I feel seen by them because they know who I am, they know what I do, and they're like, we want that. And you can tell based on the first inquiry you get from someone how heavily they've actually researched you or if they just like found you on the Knot or Wedding Wire and are sending you a generic inquiry. Usually the generic inquiries, they don't lead anywhere. Like 95% of the time, that's like, you know, not wasted time to respond, but I just know I'm not going to invest too much time in that. If I get a personalized inquiry, I know that they've at least looked at my site, my website, or my like, marketing, the Knot or Wedding Wire page, and like have a sense for me. And I can usually tell if I'm like at least in the top 3 or like top 2 just based on that first inquiry. And I think that how you name your business is actually very pivotal to that, because there is a lot of competition in the wedding space, and couples only have so much bandwidth to do research. And so the less you're asking them to research by just immediately telling them who you are and what your brand is and what you do that's different, the better chances you have of being discovered by the couples that you want to work with. So it's a hard process to figure out like what it is that makes you special. But when I started my business and I was talking to a lot of, established officiants, I was asking them about this. Like, what do I do and how do I name my business? And the best piece of advice I got, I always give her props, which is Marie Holzer, who told me this, but she said, figure out what makes you weird. And I think that is the best advice, because it really made me think about myself, and it made me kind of look at my market and think like, okay, like I respect all these people, but like there's enough work for everybody. And how do I get the couples to find me? And you don't have to reinvent yourself. I think you actually just have to be very authentic about who you are and what kind of ceremony you want to perform, and just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to the heart of the thing that you want to do, and then figure out kind of like how to come up with a business name about it, and make sure that the URL exists for it before you settle on that name. But yeah, I feel strong about that. I've actually given like a talk about that, because I think in starting your business, it's really important to start on the right foot in terms of how you present yourself with like branding.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, because I want to dig a little bit deeper with you with this conversation, and just share a little bit about me too, right? So my business name is Royal Treatment with Tiara, and I crack up because I have couples reach out to me and they're like, "Is your name really Tiara?" And I'm like, "Yes, like absolutely, yes, it is." But it's like when I came into the business, when I was trying to figure out my name, because again, I'm like, okay, do I want to go? I feel like people come in like this. They either go SEO, right, which is ceremonies by, weddings with, nuptials and whatever. They lean into their quirks. And similar to the advice you got, I say to my community, let your quirks be your niche, literally.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
let you just be your niche, whatever it is that you care about, however it is that you want to show up. If you are punny, be punny. I'm punny. So I had to, like, I was like, okay, royal treatment. People want to be treated like royalty on their wedding day. Of course, I really wanted to help couples tie the knot with ease and joy. So I'm like, okay, how can I, really lean these two in together? And I'm like, okay, royal treatment with Tiara. Oh, royal treatment with Tiara. Oh, hold
And
on.
plays on names are great. Like I do think, because it does still convey your personality, your kind of cheekiness, your like your
Yes.
punniness,
Yeah.
like
But also how I want you to feel on your wedding day, how I want to,
yeah,
how you're going to be treated throughout this entire process as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like interesting to delineate kind of like clearly on your website too. In your case, now I'm like, let's do a case study of royal, of uh so I when I hear that, I almost feel like elegant kind of like upscale weddings, which I'm assuming are not exclusively what you do. I feel like you want to work with couples of all budget ranges and everything. So I almost feel like it's important to distinguish that it's how you make them feel, not the like level of production of the wedding. And I think that if I were in your position, I would convey that pretty early on my website so that people understand that distinction. I'm going to make you feel like royalty, regardless of whether or not you have a royalty budget.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Now I am on a higher scale for officiant, so you do got to have a
Yeah.
little bit. You got to have a little
Sure.
coins in there.
Yeah. Which is good that that's in your business name. Like if that's what you're going for, that's, the tier that you're at. then that's in your company name. That's great.
Give people permission to be unique, to be quirky, to be
Mm.
punny, to just understand that, again, your authenticity, how you show up genuinely is what people are going to feel for you, right? What they see online, when they come into that consultation, they literally just want to make sure you're the same person, that you're not like a professional catfish, right? Like they want to
That's
make sure
correct.
that the vibes literally still check out. So
Well, they also want to make sure that your branding matches your personality, right?
yeah,
Because there's a lot of people out there that like talk a big game and they have their like online persona, and then they get to the consult and you're like soft spoken and
yeah,
you're like not really into it, energetic, and then it's like there's something that doesn't match with your like I'm fun on the internet and then I'm kind of like tired and checked out on the console. That's a huge red flag. You're going to lose that couple. So yes, I always say that like the way you present yourself in public has to be the same way that you show up for the couple. If there's any sort of disconnect there, then like you've lost them.
yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So I would love for you to give, if you can, a little bit more insight into your amazing documentary,
Sure.
kind of what got you started and what is the long-term plan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very much a long-term plan right now. So like don't no one should expect to see anything anytime soon, but
Listen, we're waiting for the
um
date to drop. No, go
yeah,
ahead.
I know. I also mentioned at the beginning like some of the struggles my family has gone through this year. So it's unfortunately slowed things down because that's had to be my priority. But yeah, look, I got into this. I got into the wedding business a few years ago, and as I mentioned at the beginning when you asked me like what's something that I love about doing this, I knew that I was going to enjoy getting to know couples because that's just my personality. And I've, officiated for friends before I got into doing this professionally. And I knew that I was going to like that. What I did not expect was meeting this community of fellow professional officiants, which is just this amazing, heartwarming, kind of emotionally intelligent, welcoming, totally kooky kind of people that like no one's like normal who finds their way into the wedding officiating. We're all performers. We all kind of like the spotlight to some extent. Otherwise, we wouldn't give speeches, in front of strangers all the time. So there's a very interesting there's shared qualities that I feel like a lot of us have that make us very eclectic, make us very dynamic, but also I think make us very interested in humanity and interpersonal relationships and love. And there's just like, I just kind of fell in love with this community. And I thought, not only is this like an interesting cast of characters, but within these wonderful, like the community of all these wonderful people is the subsect of the wedding industry in which all of us are undervalued. So I feel like we're all like everyone I know, I won't include me, I'll take a step back, but like all the colleagues, all the people I've gotten to know, they're very special people. Like I genuinely love them. And I feel like they have so much to offer, not just couples, but like the world. And I think it's a shame that they're undervalued and that we're constantly competing with free. So we're always the first group to get kind of thrown out or to get dismissed or to not have an opportunity to show people what a wedding ceremony can be and to really represent a couple and to connect with, your loved ones. I think it's so I don't know. It's just like it's even underserved by wedding planners a lot of times. Like I wish wedding planners would just immediately put in the budget, like here's your budget for a professional officiant. And if the couple doesn't want that, then you get to relocate that money somewhere else. But there should be a line item in every planner's budget that's like here's your money for this. And I think that should be the starting point, not an add-on. And I think that needs to be a conceptual shift. And so there's a problem here, and I think overall professional officiants have a marketing issue that we have to overcome within the industry itself, even with our vendors who are recommending us or not. And so I just thought, I have a background in film. What is the best way that I can kind of elevate all of us in this field, but also tell a really interesting story about the way that officiants, I think, elevate weddings in general. And so I just became really inspired to do that. And so where we are right now in terms of the documentary is like I put a little bit of my own money into getting started. So I've filmed I filmed an Officiant Accelerator that American Marriage Ministries hosted in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. And then based on some folks who were there, I filmed an elopement, like a nature elopement. I filmed, vow renewal. I focused on a couple of officiants in particular, just to like really get into their personal stories. And I'm putting together what is essentially called like a sizzle, which is like a pitch video presentation on what the concept is, who some of the main characters can be, and then I'm going to use some of my industry contacts in the entertainment industry to pitch that around and hopefully get funding and maybe some distribution ahead of time to go make the rest of what I hope will be a feature film or maybe even like a series. We'll see kind of like what it turns into. But yeah, right now we're kind of like finishing up what the sizzle is. I'm really enjoying working on it and revisiting all my interviews and footage with everyone. And yeah, I mean, I hope to really be able to dive into filming more of it and really working on it next year.
Awesome. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Listen, I kid you not, when I first started officiating, I think I was watching Netflix and I can't remember what show was on there, but I was like, I feel like officiants should have their own show on Netflix.
Yeah,
Like,
agreed.
I don't know, like the unspoken heroes of weddings, but they actually have a microphone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like something like that.
The unspoken, outspoken heroes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's super, super, super dope. And I kind of saw a couple of people that you were working with as they were like posting. I saw you had Charisse, you had Officiant Jimmy.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So I'm sure you have maybe like Laura Cannon and stuff like that. So that is
Of course,
super fly. We love them. Those are all our faves as well.
We do love them. Yeah. And I'm trying to like also, just to talk like, this is about kind of new officiants and this kind of like new generation. And I feel like in spending time with officiants and kind of trying to present the story of what we do, I have noticed that I feel like there are a couple different like sects of officiants and kind of groups that we fall into. And I feel like there are certain officiants who I kind of feel like are the experts, who have kind of paved the road for a lot of us, who have been doing this for decades, who have really kind of been at the forefront of like changing conceptions, changing the tide, trying to like really, sound the alarm, beat the drum that like we are here, we can do this, that couples can have the type of wedding ceremony that they want. It doesn't have to be the way that they feel like it's supposed to be. And now, like I said, I feel like within the last, I would say since the pandemic, there has been this new wave, this like next gen of people who have come into awareness that this is a job that you can even have. And none of us would even know that, or I think be allowed, allow ourselves to do it if it weren't for some of these people who have really paved the Laura Cannons and the Bethel Nathans and like these titans of our industry, Alan Katz, these people who have really made space for us to be here. And now within that is this like, millennial generation of officiants who are like standing out from the crowd, who are doing really interesting things, who are doing, great work on social media in terms of like self-promotion and stuff. And then I feel like there are some people who are kind of like on the fringes, who are like, what they do is really niche.
Yes.
And I love them because like they are so committed to just like who their couples are. Yeah. And like that's their thing and they know their lane. And there is no better example of how not to be afraid to niche down than if you look at those people, because they're some of the busiest officiants I know. And you would think that they'd be like doing themselves a disservice by having a really narrow field for who their ideal couple is, but it's incorrect. Like if you know who you are and you know who your audience is, those people will find you. Yes. And they are out there. Yes. And so like, don't be afraid to just embrace your weird and your quirks, because your community will find you and they will go out of their way to have you represent them if they feel like you know who they are.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I even want to just go a little bit deeper with that, which is find out why couples are choosing you. I think a lot of times we want to know where they came from and maybe, how their experience was, but it's like, why did they even choose you from the beginning? And that's something that I had to implement into, my services, well, not my private services, excuse me, my process is to really try to figure out that information. And what I come to find out is that a lot of my couples want someone who is modern,
Mm.
millennial,
Mm.
and melanated. And so for me, we love all the M's. I love I love that. But now it's like I get to lean into that more because that's what I thought they were looking after or wanting or whatever, because that is what I present. But it's different when you hear them speak it in their own words and why they decided to go pro. I'm starting to ask these questions now too. Like I do
Mm.
a kind of like a post ceremony testimonial, video testimonial with my couples, and
Mm.
I'm like, yes, this is great. We love to hear about your royal treatment experience, but like now I want to shift it and make it almost like a post ceremony interview. Like, are you happy you went pro? How was your story experience, being that you don't get to hear it beforehand? Like just making it more specific.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, I'm highlighting me, but I'm also highlighting what professional officiants do, like what
Yeah.
we do as like what you should be expecting, or the experience that you are more likely going to have because you went pro. And I always think about this. It's like, couples will take on the stress of writing their own ceremony, figuring out the guidelines for getting the marriage license, making sure it's properly, filed and all of these other things just to have their friend do it because they think it's going to be more fun. And I'm like realizing that's really what it is. It's like y'all will really take on all this additional stress just because you think your friend will be more fun. Well, let me show you what fun looks like without the stress.
Or they think that that's what's going to make it feel personal,
That
having
too.
someone who's personal to them,
Yes.
but they don't realize that just because you're having your best friend do it doesn't mean that they're going to know how to tell your story, make it feel personal for you. And it
Yeah.
might end up kind of like backfiring in a way, but
Yeah.
people don't know that. I mean, when I got married 7 years ago, and like I didn't even know that professional officiants were a thing. Like I just think in general there's like, there's an awareness issue about this. I think the kind of base level of understanding when you're getting married is we can have a religious figure do it, or we can ask a friend to do it. Like
You can
I
do
don't
the
think
house.
that people really know that there's a third option,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of why I want to make the documentary, and just the part of why I'm like really outspoken about that is because I want couples to know that all the options that they have. That's part of my job when you hire me is like, here's all the stuff we can do in the ceremony. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me if, either of you, have religious beliefs or anything that's important to fold in, or any kooky weird shit you want to do in your ceremony. Like, let's talk about that. And like that, just knowing that you can hire an officiant is one of those things.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I love that. So I would love for you to share your why for beginning to start as an officiant, and has that evolved since then?
That's a great question. Especially that second part. um, so my why was because, I've always wanted to work in entertainment. I like for the, I've always wanted to be, like I said, I thought I wanted to be an actor for a long time. And then I became a filmmaker, and like, I still am very passionate about that. Obviously I'm making this documentary, like I still work in film. Um, but the film business is, it's very fickle, and it's tough. And I know that people on the outside like think it's this glitz and glam, really beautiful thing that like seems so cool. But it's really, really brutal. And the truth is that the film industry doesn't care about you. Like everyone, like think of actors that you grew up loving watching in the 90s that you haven't seen in 15 years, because this industry disposes people very readily, because there will always be like a younger, hotter, and it's not just actors, like filmmakers, screenwriters, there's always someone right behind you who like, maybe might not even be as good, but is just like more interesting and fresh.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, it's exhausting and it's a rat race. And I got to a certain point in my career where I just felt like I was in a toxic relationship with my own career, with my own profession, where I was like, I'm putting so much more love into this relationship than I'm receiving, and that never feels good. And so I just realized that like I needed something more. Like I wanted to feel fulfilled outside of entertainment. And I have a very specific skill set as like a writer and entertainer that doesn't translate to being an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. So I was like, what am I supposed to do with the fact that I know how to write and I'm good with people and I'm entertaining? And I had been asked to officiate weddings for friends, and that went so well that those friends were very encouraging of me considering doing this professionally. And I started writing a romantic comedy screenplay about a professional wedding officiant. And so, in researching that story, I reached out to some professionals that I had found and just started interviewing them. And throughout the course of interviewing them, I just realized that like everything they were talking about was like I did like that sounded fun. Like I started remembering my friends being like, maybe you should do this professionally, and I was like, maybe I do want to do this professionally. So it's one of the things where some people fall into this because people start calling them, right? Like their friend, you do your thing for a friend, and then there's someone in the crowd, and then they call and ask you, and like I love that. Like I love these stories of people who are so valued that like they were given this new career based on demand. That was not my case. No one asked me to do this. I like really was like, I want to do this. And I kind of was hoping that people would hire me and like care that I was in the space. But I got into it, and we've already kind of covered this in this interview. But yeah, I discovered all the similarities between what I was doing as a filmmaker and a writer to how they parlay into, being an entertainer and being a ceremonialist. And I just realized that, yeah, I can give people the same kind of emotional, memorable experience that I was chasing as a filmmaker. I can do that at ceremonies. And unlike being a filmmaker, where you write a screenplay and then you got to go find the money and you got to find producers and you got to cast actors and maybe it never happens. And maybe you think you have a go movie and then the studio cancels the project. It's like there's 1,000 different things that can go wrong, and it takes so long to ever get anything made. It's honestly so refreshing that I can meet with a couple, I can write a ceremony. Within a few weeks, I'm performing it in front of all their loved ones. I'm getting the laughter, I'm getting the tears. And then it's like, and then we had the experience. And then you move on to the next one. And it's like, and like, if you've done a good job, you get those reviews, you get that kind of like confirmation that you are, touching people poignantly and emotionally. And it's like, it's everything I love about being a filmmaker in a shorter time span without as much, barrier for entry. So, I do love that. And then you're asking me, the other question was like, how did that evolve? Like, how did I get into it? Why did it started? Um, I maybe only realized this recently, and it might have to do with just like, my political beliefs and kind of the election that we just had this week and where we're at. But I didn't realize this getting into this work, but I have realized that there is something. I've realized that the work that professional officiants do is very important. I believe that it's important in a way that I hadn't realized before I got into it, and that is that like we are at the forefront of changing people's minds and pushing boundaries and showing people that the traditional beliefs that they hold on to are not invalid, but they can evolve into something else. That there is, just because you've done something a certain way, or your parents did it a certain way, or your community does it a certain way, doesn't mean that it's the only way. And if you are open to a broader perspective that either includes multicultural perspectives or diverse backgrounds, or just like a little bit more freedom of thought, it can open you up into possibilities that you did not know were available to you. And my favorite part, one of my favorite parts of like officiating ceremony is the couple's aunt or grandfather or that older generation that comes up to you afterwards with big eyes and they shake my hand and they go, I didn't know it could be like that. And like that is the moment where you realize that like inch by inch, you can start to introduce people to the idea that like there is an honorable, honest, and integral way, like integral with integrity, to present an alternative to conservatism. And when I say conservatism, it's like you're stuck in a certain way of doing something. And I think by nature of what we do, by not being, religious figures traditionally, we're on the forefront of pushing those boundaries. And that is something very special. And I think it's very important. And I think that the work that we do is so cool because you do it in a space that's disarming to people. I think people show up to a wedding ceremony and they're used to that setting and it's a safe space for them and they might not know what to expect, but it's kind of a sacred space. And you honor that hallowed ground, but then you start playing with it like within that. And like maybe I do drop an F-bomb or like, I show people that like, okay, like we can be like I can honor this and I can take this seriously, but also in a new way with different language. And I don't have to be that religious figure as long as the couple feels represented and as long as they leave married, then like, why does it really matter? And so we can all start opening people's minds. And there are many people in this space who've been doing it for a long time, and I really respect and value them. But I think it's important for us all to acknowledge and remember that we have that power and to use it wisely and to talk to one another within the space about like, well, what are you doing to make sure that like, you know, you're not only preaching kindness and joy and inclusivity, but you're embodying it in how you perform and conduct ceremony. And that's something that's become very powerful to me and meaningful to me only recently in doing this more and more professionally.
That's good. That's good. And I think similar to your point, it's a lot of reimagining traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of times people do want to hold on to the traditions, but maybe not in the same exact way, right? Or maybe there's something has changed, or they want to elevate it, or they want to, again, just add a different aspect to it that it's not exactly the same. And I think, again, I say this all the time, but a lot of what we do as officiants is we give people permission. We release people from these boxes and we allow them, again, the options or opportunities to see the ceremony look differently than what they've seen, what they've witnessed, what, you know, their parents may want for them or what society wants to put on them. And so I love how you're saying essentially own the position that you're in, the authority you have as an officiant with providing a different way to do things, an alternative way. And again, you're going to have couples who, like everybody said, this is their first time doing this, right? They're coming to you as a professional. They're looking for you to advise them. And so when you have conversations with couples and they're like, well, so what's the processional order? Like, what do you do? I have to do it this way? Do I have to do that way? Like, what if I don't want this person to walk with that person or to walk me down? Or what if I want to walk down solo? And I'm like, well, walk down solo, girl. Like, you know what I mean? You give people permission to make them and their ceremony uniquely theirs. And sometimes you don't realize that they're carrying other people's ceremony on their back when they're talking to you. Because when you start to ask them, why do you want to do this? Or what's connected to it for you? They don't necessarily have an answer. And that's a great opening conversation to reimagine tradition. Okay, you want to hold on to this, you know, then we'll see if you do or don't. But even if you do, all right, if we wanted to look a different way, we have options. We can do that. And so
And what that reveals to all of us is that so many people want something different. They just don't know if they're allowed to have it, right? It's like they need someone like us in that position of authority to say like, I don't know who told you that like you had to do it this way or like made you feel like you were beholden to some sort of tradition, but like that's bullshit. Like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It's like they, you know, it's almost like they need a, sometimes honestly, and I've seen this, like they need a counterpart to their parents or their grandparents who are kind of like encouraging them to do it the way they did it because that's what tradition feels like to them. And they need you to step in and be like, okay, well, is it important for you to do it that way? Or is that like coming from somebody else? And if it is important to you to like sort of appease or honor your parents in some way, then let's at least talk about what that could look like. That's not exactly like what you're being told to do. And I'm like totally happy to do that. You know, there are some officiants out there who are just like, I'm secular, I don't do religious weddings. Like if you want to mention, you know, God or have some sort of like religious unity ritual, that's not for me. And that's not the case with like me at RomCom Weddings. Like I want it to feel special to them. So if there is some sort, like I'm not going to give a sermon. Like I'm not a religious figure. that is like, I'm going to draw the line. But like,
Yeah.
but if there is some sort of like tradition that's important to you or your parents, or you want to honor them, or something that like, you know, is religious, or like, let's talk about how to modernize it. Let's talk about how to customize it, and let's put it in the ceremony. There's no reason that we can't do that. But again, it's giving them permission to like, we can do that thing, but there's more than one way to do it. So let's like talk about how you want to do it. And that's always the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so good. So good. I love that. I think just even more specifically again for this series, which is the new officiant era, right? We are in an era of new ways to officiate, whether you are
Mhm.
going, secular, religious, a little bit of a mix. There's just so much customization that you can have, these days. So I love that. And I love that again, giving people permission. It sounds so crazy and it sounds like, well, they should be telling us what they want us to do. You know what I mean? It sounds like that. But when you start doing the work, when you get into these conversations in these spaces where it's just a couple and you and the walls are down and it's a lot more vulnerable and they're able to express some of the things that they have going on that they might not be talking to their other vendors about. They don't feel comfortable, or that's just not a part of it, so they don't know that they can have this conversation, but they feel like they're supposed to have that conversation with you, and rightfully so, right? So we have
Yeah.
to do our due diligence in meeting them where they're at, and then opening up the door and showing them a whole new, no, I'm not gonna say, but you know what I mean.
Do the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So Nico, I would love for you to share with our community if you have any officiant coaching, mentorship, education, products, or opportunities. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can connect with me on Instagram or via like my website. It's all RomCom Weddings, RomCom Weddings on Instagram, romcomweddings.com. Branding again, make it easy for people to find you. I do offer like coaching for first, second time officiants. That's usually for like friend or family officiants, but if you're also like starting your business, it can fall under that category. So you can, hit me up online there. And then, yeah, like I've done short seminars through American Marriage Ministries, and you can kind of like find those on their website, or also like via me if you want like links to that. But that is a lot about like how to brand your business, getting started, what we've discussed about like my feelings that you really need to niche down. So if you want to learn more about that, I have like a 20-minute talk on that. But yeah, just get in touch with me for more. Like I'm so value the advice and guidance that I both received from officiants with more experience than me when I got started, and the folks who I continue to turn to just, to be in community with or to get advice from. And I think that especially in a line of work where we never really get to see each other's work, right? Like we kind of do it in a vacuum and we don't really know like how's someone else doing it, or like how am I supposed to do this part and get other ideas. Like it's important to just talk to each other. So always happy to talk shop with anyone in the biz.
We love that. We love that. So, was there any question that we didn't ask or any topic that you wanted to chat about that I did not get a chance to?
Oh, no, I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Like I hope that this conversation can be helpful to people getting started, and even like folks who are just like curious about, officiating what we do, even if they already have a business. Hopefully, people have like learned some things, or I don't know, that I wasn't just rambling. But no, I appreciate you chatting with me.
I love that. I love that. So, before you head off, I would love for you to share maybe one last piece of advice, specifically for officiants looking to bring a more cinematic or theatrical touch to the ceremonies who do not quite have the production and theater background.
Who don't have the production and theater background. Well, I think first of all, it's something that I said already, but I'll just repeat, which is like if you're looking to make the ceremony funny or entertaining, don't try to project something that didn't come from the couple. Just like pull those stories, pull those anecdotes from the couple. Even if you're not sure what to say, quote them. Like when I'm doing my interviews with them, I'm taking copious notes, and if they say something romantic or funny or particularly insightful, I will literally write it down verbatim And it's always nice to quote them back to themselves and back to their community, because it really, it conveys to everyone that you've really taken the time to get to know them and that you were really listening and paying attention. And I think it also helps the couple to feel really seen and heard, to know that like they are present in their own ceremony. So even if you're not trying, like, yes, if you want it to be cinematic or like entertaining, I think one thing too is like, keep in mind that although it does feel like a performance, just remember that there is no fourth wall. Like, just because you're standing up there with the couple and everyone is seated looking at you and it feels like you're on stage, I try to break that format as much as possible. Like, something that's really important to me is helping the couple to not feel ornamental during their own ceremony. What I mean by that is like, don't make it seem like they're kind of up on, I mean, they are on a pedestal to some extent, but like,
like a spectacle. Yeah.
yeah, but like, don't make it feel like they're inaccessible in some way, or that there's this like wall or gap between them and their loved ones. So like, something that I'll even do during a ceremony at some point, which like, I used to call it like a moment of mindfulness or like a moment in community. And honestly, like now I just call it a group hang, because
Yeah.
like that's kind of what it is, which is like, I have an unscripted moment where I, have them take a moment to look at everybody that they've gathered here and really like take this in and slow things down and try to commit this to memory. And then like, look, I've done this enough. I'm comfortable like in front of people. I will like bring the audience into the ceremony and I'll like have them participate. And if mom and dad are in the front row, I'll even check in and ask them how they're feeling, or like ask them a follow-up question about something I said in the story earlier. I want us to feel like we are in a group setting, all hanging out together, and not like me and the couple are kind of like some unattainable, untouchable thing that everyone is just watching. So even if you don't have a background in like entertainment or like, comedy, if you just are trying to make things feel more cinematic and like a little bit more loose, just consider playful ways that feel comfortable to you, to break up the tradition, even of the format of like what a ceremony is. Like just, and you can try it. And if it doesn't work at one ceremony, then like make adjustments and do it at the next one. That's kind of the great thing of what we do, is like, we are performers. There's a little bit of like, not stand-up comedy, but there is a like, we get a chance to try things and see how they work and refine stuff. And yeah, don't be afraid. Like, if you're already in this space and you're not a religious figure, then you're already breaking the mold. So don't be afraid to try to break more molds and push some boundaries and kind of explore what a wedding ceremony can even be.
That's great advice. That's great advice. You know, we have taken a lot of your time today. We have taken a lot of your gems, and we appreciate you for dropping them. And we thank you for your yes, for you coming on our platform, sharing with our community. I know you are going to unlock a lot of potential in our officiant friends and peers, with the work that you're doing, with the way that you show up in our industry, and the way that you pour back into your officiant peers. So I want to say a very special thank you
Oh, thank
for
you.
spending the time with us today.
Well, thank you for creating this space for everybody to also learn, and giving people resources for education. And I think that that's really special as well.
Thank you. Okay, guys, we will see you next week. Bye.